This is a special bonus episode on the topic of Ben Torah and sports. There's a big game coming up on Sunday, and if you didn't know that, you should probably turn off this episode and go back to the Rashba you were learning. But for the rest of us, there are major questions when it comes to the place of sports in the life of a Ben Torah. Our guest this week is Ari Solomon. In the first part, we talk about his wild life story. I won't ruin it for you in the intro, but let's just say that Ari hit it big in the sports world. Like, really big. Then we get into some of the meaty questions about Torah and sports. Why do the best players have such star power? Is sports a pastime or a religion? And how does Ari educate his Talmidim to a healthy relationship with sports? Yes, you heard that right, Talmidim. My name is Yaakov Wolf, and this is Starting. So you have had a very quick rise in the world of professional sports. There was a lot of siyata d'shmaya involved. So let's quickly run through some of the big junctions along that journey. Let's start with your laptop that broke when you were in yeshiva.
The laptop, that is definitely a famous story. So ultimately, the way that I was always very into sports. When I was growing up, I always knew I wanted to do something in sports. And that was pretty much my life. Professional sports, playing sports. And so in high school, I actually started picking up graphic design. I played 5 sports in high school. So sports were really just my life through and through. And my parents really encouraged me to pick up graphic design because I was very creative. I used to do a lot of hand drawing and create uniforms and a lot of sports type of drawings. And my parents said, okay, maybe you're not all that great at drawing by hand. So, you have a lot of creativity. So maybe if you just learn how to do it on a computer, it could be good. So I said, okay, great. I started a business in high school, a graphic design business. So I was doing local things, advertisements, some flyers, with the ultimate goal of somehow building it into a sports career. I didn't know how, but I was doing on a little bit of a local level. So when I went to yeshiva for the year, I guess I was, 18 years old. So I was in Mavaseret, and every single night, after night seder, I would go and I would work. I actually kept on running my business remotely. I was doing, bar mitzvah logos, bat mitzvah logos, all the general type of stuff. And one night, I went back to my computer and after night seder, and I opened my computer to do my regular work, and everything was gone. Mamish, every single file, every single design, every single thing I ever did was just completely wiped out of my computer. I didn't know what was going on. I was on the phone with Apple for hours, mamish until Nate's, and didn't know what happened. Turns out there was a long file chain. It all rooted back into one random file that I had from my middle school days that I actually just deleted because I wanted to get it off my computer. Lost everything, and I wasn't able to get it back. So at that point, I really I said, okay, I got to restart somehow. So that was when I actually started, learning how to do sports design. So I started creating pictures of professional athletes and things that they would post on their social media pages. Just the rest of the basic story goes is that I created this idea and I said, let me just start creating pictures of these players and say, hey, I'll send it out to them. And very simply, if you post it on your page and give me a tag, you give me some recognition and whatnot, then hopefully lead to me getting some jobs and whatever, then I'll do this for free. And so I maybe send out like 2,000 or 3,000 messages throughout social media channels and whatnot. Ultimately, maybe I got like 10, 15 responses from, lower level minor league players, but that was all I really needed. That was how I ultimately got into it. So if not for the broken laptop, this is obviously the story continues, but just to the exact question, if not for the broken laptop, it was mamish, the greatest siyata d'shmaya that ever happened. It was one of those moments that I could have easily just looked all the way down and that could have been it. But it really ended up, you see, everything is all siyata d'shmaya.
Right. And obviously, siyata d'shmaya coupled with the resilience and decision to view this as not also a challenge, but also an opportunity to rethink and reframe and reboot your business, which is exactly what happened. And then at a short time later, COVID hit. And as you mentioned before, you're savvy with social media. Obviously, COVID was a very difficult time for a lot of people, but people who were able to really own the digital spaces were able to really take off during COVID. So what was that like for you?
So yeah, during COVID, that was really the big opportunity that I had at that point. So in terms of on the professional side of things, how I really grew in that space was, I saw that a lot of people were during COVID didn't really know what to do with themselves. And, and then especially I noticed, not just people that I knew, but I saw a lot of professional athletes, especially had nothing to do with themselves. Like I was seeing all these videos all around of these guys just like making obstacle courses in their backyards, like professional sports players, like clearly bored out of their minds. So I had this idea to start trying to take advantage of that. And so number one, I'm one of my chavrusa actually in YU. His name is Eli Jonah Carls. Back in the day, amazing guy. Just give him a quick plug. But it turned out that he grew up with a guy named Joe Valeno, who was a first round pick of the Detroit Red Wings, and he decided to tell me this, about like 6 months after we started learning together. And he's like, oh yeah, I know you do all this types of stuff, social media and design, and maybe there could be something here. So we got in touch, the three of us, and I got in touch with Joe, and we created this social media challenge for him, where basically it was to raise awareness for like mental health or the pandemic. And that really allowed me to start getting my foot in the door and start making a lot of connections with a lot of NHL players, a lot of celebrities, and a lot of people. So that was really kind of how I got my foot in the door at that point. Then I realized once I had all these connections, I said, okay, you know what? There's so much opportunity here with all these types of things, and I clearly I could see right now that everybody's looking for something to do, and so I had this unique idea. So I created this podcast called the 5 Minute Drop, because the podcast is a live video. The whole idea was I reached out to a bunch of professional athletes, and I basically said, hey, if you come onto my live with me for 5-10 minutes, super chill conversation, interview, very, very casual, and we'll talk for 5-10 minutes. And after the show, that the way that we're gonna end it off, the shtick is gonna be that I'm gonna reveal to you live on camera a piece of custom one-of-one artwork that I made for you, and I'm gonna send it to you as a gift. So we get your reaction live, and that's kind of the whole point of the show. And so I started off, I was doing 2 a week, and I started reaching out. And I originally started off, with maybe like some lower down, minor leaguers, but ultimately, and my goal, what people realize also, my goal wasn't to get, I had no interest in even trying to get, big professional athletes on, like top players. My goal is I was actually looking for people, maybe the minor league baseball players, those types of people, because they themselves are entrepreneurs. Like, I was trying to figure out a way how to get my way into the sports industry to work. And I realized that, the top professional athletes making millions and millions of dollars, they don't think of anything, but they just play sports and go home and take off their shoes and do nothing. But a lot of these other guys, they have to figure out a way, how to make a living. So they're doing a lot of entrepreneurial things. So I was specifically looking for players and people in the sports industry to bring on who I know they had some experience in the business world. And so the fourth person that I brought on my show was a guy named Alex Katz, who, 6 years later, we worked together. And ultimately, he just recently created this company called Stadium Custom Kicks. So Alex was actually an Olympian. He played baseball for Team Israel in the Olympics, the World Baseball Classic. And he just started this company called Stadium Custom Kicks, as I mentioned. Doing customized footwear for professional athletes, basically taking plain white Nike cleats or Adidas or whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, and actually being able to hand paint any design you can imagine onto them. So something that even the shoe companies themselves couldn't do. And he was doing that for professional athletes. And, I brought him on hoping that, we could make some sort of connection. And sure enough, he actually hired me, after we got along really well. And I was a college kid. I was at that point. I started off in YU. I didn't finish in YU. I started off in YU. Even at that point, I was like, oh, we were remote. And he said, okay, you ready for your first job? I said, I'm ready for my first job. And he said, your first job is Jacob deGrom on the New York Mets. And so if anybody knows baseball, at least back then, at that point, also Jacob deGrom was like 2 Cy Youngs, like the top player in all baseball. Like I was absolutely thrilled, but I had to play cool. But that was my first real interest in it. So I made the shoes for Jacob deGrom. They're honoring Tom Seaver. They got a tremendous amount of media attention. People were like, this is insane. What is this? Who's behind this? Who did this? And sure enough, that kind of led back to me, and that led to me starting to get more and more jobs. The company, we started to grow. And like I said, 6 years later, 5 years later, whatever it is, we're here. We're still here now. I work with thousands of professional athletes. I'm partnered with 8 NFL teams. I'm working with a lot of big companies, and basically just, we're doing thousands and thousands of custom shoes a year. So that was, from the COVID beginning, that's ultimately the short story, how we got here.
Wow. I mean, I also actually played on Team Israel baseball. People don't know this, but if you were an 8th grader in Beit Shemesh and you knew how to throw a ball in somewhat of a straight direction, you could make like the national team. But we're going to go there right now. The final sort of piece of Siyata Dishmaya in this very quick rise of yours was the fact that Mamish, like in the perfect timing, MLB actually changed their rules that really paved the way. So maybe just share that bit, and then we'll hear that as well.
Yeah, at that point, because people know baseball is always, people might classify it as a boring sport. People have always kind of classified it as more of a boring sport. And they weren't wrong. They're not wrong. They weren't wrong. In recent years, MLB has definitely tried to do new things. But what they actually started doing the exact year that I came on is because of COVID. Because during COVID, baseball attendance was already down. And then once you put in COVID for it, the MLB was like really in trouble. And so they were just trying to do anything they could to make themselves relevant and to get people to just turn on the TV and just watch the games. There was no fans in the stands. So they actually did this thing where they uplifted all of their footwear restrictions, where they said, guys can wear whatever you want. Because the reason they even had that idea is because, for the previous couple of years, the MLB had a special weekend called Players Weekend, where they would allow the players to wear custom cleats and wear whatever they wanted. And there was so much, good attention from that. People loved it. So they decided, let's see, if we can make ourselves a little bit more relevant by letting guys come on with really cool Jordans and flashy shoes, and we're just going to lift all the restrictions. And that was the exact time that I came in. So that was golden opportunity for me to be able to start working with all these guys. And once I did DeGrom, then all the other players started to get in touch and say, we want this too. And then we actually started to really kind of pave the way in the MLB, even with what we were doing. We started doing 2 different color shoes, and players started saying, I want those. I want 2 different color shoes. And then that was tremendous. Again, I'll say out this fine, but that was really an incredible moment.
And basically all this led you to really accomplishing your lifelong dreams. You were still very, very young. So tell us, what were those dreams and what did it feel like to accomplish them?
Yeah, ultimately, my dream was my entire life. I would say when I was a kid, I didn't necessarily even have a specific vision. I had a more general vision in the sense of I wanted to be like that guy in sports. I wanted to be the guy that could go on the field, say hi to the players know your name, and you just, whatever game you want to go to, you can just walk in and you're just there. I just want to be like the guy. I want to be involved in sports. I had no idea what that looked like, but that was all I wanted to do. And once I really, there was not anywhere in my plans and wildest imaginations. Like people say, like, well, this must have been a dream come true. I'm like, it wasn't really a dream come true because it's not something I could have ever really imagined, even in my wildest dreams. What ended up happening ultimately, that by the time I was 20 years old, I was officially credentialed with Major League Baseball. And I was able to, whenever I go to a stadium, I can go on the field and go into the dugouts, and all the players have them. I know my name and in my numbers, and just talking. And, I'm very friendly with, a lot of guys. They all know me as, I stand out very much, obviously. I don't change the way I look when I go anywhere or do anything, and being able to kind of forge those relationships. So, I mean, the dream come true it's an understatement, but it was something that it was unbelievable. It is unbelievable, still unbelievable. It's never not going to be unbelievable, but to actually be able to see that come true at such a young age. And I think, I know we're probably going to discuss, a little bit more, kind of what that led to, what it really meant to me. But it definitely set me on, I would say, a different path to be able to understand.
Yeah, so you did achieve tremendous success, and then things start to shift a little bit. So was there like a specific moment where you felt like something here is off, something is not right?
Yeah, there was, and really playing off of that point that I was saying, is that this was really my whole dream. And the moment, I remember the first time I actually got approved for a credential, which means, I'm not saying credential, I mean a media credential, that you get like a special pass, your picture in it, you go to the stadium, you have to go through a back tunnel, you actually go through the area with the locker room, just walking in the hallway, you're passing by all the Mets players and all the people, and you're part of it. You're in it, and then you just walk onto the field, and all the security guards. It's just that was the coolest thing. That for me, that was really like full circle. Like I remember, like I really felt like I was just in Ghana. Like for me, being my entire life, I was so obsessed with sport. This was it. I was a 20-year-old kid, 21 years old, something I don't even remember. One of those two. It's all the same thing at this point, honestly. But yeah, and then then as I did, I did it once, did it twice, then I kept on getting these credentials, and I kept on going. And every time a new team came into town, I would make sure to go to the stadium. So I wanted to go talk to all the new guys and make sure I was talking to everybody. And then at a certain point, I started to feel something kind of shift inside, and it was a little bit alarming. And I started to feel alarmed at it because I started to be like, do I really want to go over the bridge right now? I really kind of want to just stay home and hang out and eat dinner with my wife. Do I really want to go all the way to Queens right now to go do this? And on the inside, I was just kind of yelling at myself, like, wait a minute, what are you saying? Like, no, of course you do. This is your ikker. This is your purpose. Like, this is everything. This is everything to you. Of course you want to go to Queens right now. Of course you want to pay the tolls. Like, it shouldn't even happen, what are you talking about? And I really started to think about it on the inside, and I was started to really do a lot of contemplation. Like, what am I doing right now? Like, this is crazy. And then ultimately I sat down and I realized, I'm like, wow, I realized that Shem has blessed me with something incredible, in the sense that I think I've really just accomplished my life dream and goal at this point. Again, what that means is that when I say my life dream and goal, doesn't mean I was by any means set with Parnassa. I'm not ready to go. But the point was that in terms of all I wanted to get in terms of my ultimate picture of being who I wanted to be and knowing who I wanted to know, I was there. I started to feel myself start to fall into this chase of okay, now that I feel like I'm here, now I need to get more. Now I need to talk to more guys. Even though I didn't really need to, in terms of, it wasn't helping my Parnassa, it wasn't helping anything. It was just to be able to say that I know this guy now and I know this guy now, because I felt like I hit that point. And that's when I started to realize, I started to really begin to kind of consider and understand what the Rebbeim were always saying. And what I knew that all my Rebbeim always said, which is everything outside of the Torah is just like finite. There's Gashmias says finite. There's nothing. Now it's okay, fine. It's nice, Muslim, move on with our days and just go ahead. But I started to really feel it and realize it. And I'm like, this is insane. I'm literally 21 years old. I have a whole life ahead of me, but I feel like I've already done it. Now I feel like everything else I'm doing now is just an unnecessary chase. And I started to feel myself fall down this path of just chase. And at that point, I really felt like there was a message being sent to me, and that ultimately that I had some sort of tremendous Shemaya and tremendous opportunity that I was basically just being shown the path in front of me. Like I've given you something over here that you have, that you're going to be able to use and, continue along the story, obviously. But it was really that moment of just recognizing that I could either jump in and follow the chase and keep on just trying to build on what I don't even, who knows what I was building up on, what I already had, or really try to look a little bit deeper and try to figure out, what I could do now.
And also, when you're building up this business, you made it sound very successful. I mean, it was, but I'm sure it was also like a lot of hard work involved, a lot of stress and sweat, in addition to the brilliant strategies that you came up with.
Yeah, there was a tremendous amount of work. I used to work. When I say that, the amount I used to work, I used to literally work like 17-hour days. Like when I was, and it's crazy to me. Before I was married, when I was what I was trying to do and to get to this point, the reason I was able to fly so quickly, so to speak, was because I really I didn't stop. Like I really, from the moment I woke up, and that was, and kind of as a whole, how did my day look in terms of my learning and everything. I really just kind of understood, and I said, okay, fine. The way that I just kind of felt that the way the world goes is, okay, now that I'm out of yeshiva, I'm a working man. I have a tremendous, I really had, and leaving yeshiva, I had a tremendous type to like really, to really get close to Hashem, really get close to my learning. But the point was, I said, okay, but this is what happens. You come a balabas, now you got to work, now you have parnasa. So, I'll do the daf in the morning. I had a chavrus with my father. We did amazing. We finished a lot of masechtas together. But then after that, I had to go work, and that was it. I was working hours and hours and hours and hours. I ultimately, at a certain point, because when you're just trying to, when you're like a commission job, also everything is you're just trying to chase and chase and chase. And I realized at a certain point that I was just doing more than I needed to do. There was like, I was just trying to grab as many emails as I can and grab as many people as I could bring myself into. And I felt like there was just a lot of time and a lot being spent on the work. And that was ultimately when those two mentalities meshed. Like that moment I started to really start to think a little bit deeper and be like, what do I really need to be doing now? Do I need to be chasing right now? Or is this an opportunity for me to really look a little bit deeper and see how can I change my life right now? How can I actually shift? How can I get myself out of this mentality? As I started to wonder, and I started to think to myself, okay, what would happen right now? Let's say I'm working a 12-hour workday or something like that right now, which is, again, way more than anybody's. Because when I say I have a 12-hour workday, for me, like that doesn't mean, about, 5 hours and an hour at the coffee room and an hour lunch break and an hour run. Like for me, when I say 12 hours, I mean, I would sit down for 12 hours and that's it. I would just go weiter. I wouldn't stop. And I said, what would happen? Let's just say in theory, what would happen if I like take an extra hour in the morning to try to learn a little bit more? Like what would happen? And I was, in my mind, I was thinking, this is crazy. And you got to understand the mentality that a person like me was in at this point is, you can't do that. you got to make your product. You got to grow. You got to get there. You got to get in touch with as many people as you can. Time is money, right? You can spend an hour learning, but then that's an hour of people you're not getting in touch with, and an hour of not designs you're not making, and people you're not talking to. But I said, just what would happen? Let me just try and see what happens. Sure enough, I tried it and see what an hour. And what did I see? Nothing. I was like, this is crazy. Like I didn't lose anything. And not only did I not lose anything, I started to notice something. And then I said, you know what? Let me give myself another 15 minutes. Let me just try to see. What if I take a halacha seder upon myself? Maybe just, something quick. Kids are shulchan, whatever it is. Let's just see what happens if I take a little bit more here. And I did it. And what happened? Nothing. And it was battles like every single moment. But I started to really feel like for myself, I said, I have to be blind to see that there's something coming down to me for time, showing me that I clearly have some sort of potential that I don't even know that I have in terms of my avodas Hashem, in terms of learning, because of the fact that all this crazy insane amounts of bracha, and the fact that I've had this, like, was able to have this recognition. I know a lot of people don't really get. Like a lot of people end up, maybe by the time they're 65 years old, having the same realization I get when they kind of hit that point that I hit when they're 20 years old, and looking back at me like, what did I just spend my whole life on this chase for? And then what did we get to? And I realized that there's something that there's clearly a message here for me to change. And sure enough, I started to notice something even crazier, that the more that I started to, so to speak, decrease from the extra hours and the hours and hours and hours that I was putting in by work, and the more that I started to learn, the more I started to make in terms of parnasa, because I like in terms of this specific role that I was in and I was doing, I was making commissions. Theoretically, that doesn't really work, right? The more you work, the more commissions you get, the more people you talk to, the more commissions you get. But I started to notice that the more I started to learn, the more commission I started to make. I started to really just battle and just do it. Ultimately, that mentality and going there was what brought me, and just keep on seeing how I was progressing every day, just kind of fighting that battle and realizing that I'm not losing anything as a whole. Like really, like even these 10-15 extra minutes that I'm doing here, maybe I got to wake up a little bit earlier now. Okay, fine, so let me add 15 minutes earlier. What's going to happen to me? Nothing happened. I felt like I was always just kind of scared to take that jump. I'm scared to do that, just like I feel like a lot of people probably are. When you're working, it's like you feel like you just can't. Your boss is going to be mock bit on this, and you're going to be mock bit on this, and you're going to miss this. But then ultimately, when you just realize that, ultimately, when you're doing the right thing, it's all good. It's all going to work. So 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. And then until I got to the point where I was, getting up at in the 3s and 4s to learn throughout the day, and obviously progresses
So
from there.
I love so much of that. I love the fact that the realization spurred you to actually take action, which is not pashut at all. I love the fact that it was like a slow chip by chip, and that you stuck with it and saw bracha and atzlacha. And I love the fact that even those small baby steps were painful and a war. I really love all of that depiction. So maybe just tell our listeners, where are you up to now as far as your journey and balancing your work and your learning?
Yeah. So where I actually ended up. So then obviously everybody was asking, okay, great. If the story still ends there, people and all might tell me the narrator, but just like, so this is all great. This is all really cool. You're a big shoe designer, isn't it? How on earth are you just a Rebbe in Eretz Yisrael? Like, and you're still doing that. People say, okay, so you quit your job? I said, no, I'm doing it all. And plus more. So the way that it progressed from there, after I really started to really start grinding and push and take much more seriously, I ended up, and there was a kollel down the street from where I was living, and it was a small base measure, just filled the kollel of guys from like some Hasidim from Muncie, some guys from Lakewood. It was very, very interesting in group. I felt like awkward again. That was also a challenge, just kind of walk in there, and I was just the random guy in the corner. I just took up a little spot and just started to do my thing, and I just started to learn. And that itself was just a challenge. It was kind of awkward, but ultimately I spent a lot of time there, and I started to get close with the guys. I started to get friendly with them. They saw that I was, these guys are sitting there and they're learning for a living. They're working hard, and they just see me, for hours in the morning just sitting in the corner. So they were very curious about what my story was and what I was doing. They had real hashpah on me. I started to seek out. I started to really start to fly, in the sense of, not that I was necessarily, I saw myself, I started really working on my skills, like on a personal level, just on my own, just in terms of all my learning, as of just learning how to learn, and just really just spending like hours on the words of Shulchan Aruch and hours on the words of Tosfos, just trying to learn how to learn just learn how to learn, just try to get like a generally idea of Torah, and just I realized I have the time, so I didn't really know where I was going with it, but just to do what I was doing. And I started to try to seek out chavrusas. Also, I wanted to start to seek out people. I said, there's clearly so much opportunity in this space, in this place, and I wanted to seek out people who I knew could really have some sort of like direct hashpah in the sense. So I met a guy who was he's a Ger Tzedek, incredible guy, David Storfer. So hopefully he'll get a shout out for there. Abish incredible. He's somebody I found him, and we had one conversation. I said, I need to learn with you. Can you just teach me everything? So he taught me. He taught me Derech Hashem for a couple of years, and it was incredible. And that covers then another person I met. His name's or Messiah, also another balabas, another is Baal Tshuva, somebody who had tremendous hashpah on me, like local guys who it was very awkward for me to just go up to these guys and ask them to learn. I'm not like a yeshiva kid anymore. I was married. I was working. I had but to be able to kind of throw that. So I started to really learn with it. I started learning every day. I started doing Basa B'Chlav. I started doing all these things with the Kollel, and Baruch Hashem, it was for a couple of years. It was very, very good. And then at a certain point, I was was so into my learning, and I was so into everything. I really had this and I was learning, and balancing in a much stronger way with my work. And I said, like, what I had, and I had experience, and I said maybe the reason that Hashem kind of put me through all these crazy experiences, that I didn't even talk about even a quarter of the crazy experiences that that I went through and experienced and got to have, being in those positions, was because of the fact that I know that I have a certain respect level from high school guys, just because of the fact, nothing to do with anything besides the fact that they think what I do is the coolest thing in the world. They think I'm the coolest person ever, just because of the fact that I talk to their favorite sports players and whatnot. So I said, maybe using that thing. I know it's very difficult. It's very difficult, if you're a rabbi, if you're a high school rebbe, try to put out a flyer and tell guys, okay, come learn extra time. I said, but maybe if I'm the cool sneaker designer guy, and maybe that's a way I can kind of wrap them in. And I felt myself in an unconventional way, so to speak, find my inspiration, find my Abbas Hashem, and find my derech. That maybe now that I kind of have those tools, that I can give that over to other people, and that's really just my goal. So I put out a flyer. I said, anybody wants to come learn? I said, I'm going to give a shir mitzvila before you go to high school in the morning. So because I started at the same time, we got to mention, but at the same time I also started over this period about batim kola, the same concept of just trying to get people around me to see the same light, that I was given, well, Hashem, straight from Shemaim. So I wanted to make sure that people have the same opportunities. So we started Seder at like 5 a.m, and it was amazing. It was incredible. We really had an incredible amount of going. And as part of that kola, so second Seder was 7 o'clock, 7:15, before the guys would go to school and go to work. And so sure enough, the first day we put out this flyer for high school guys to come learn before they went to high school, and we had 20 guys show up, and we had a very consistent chabura, all the way until I came to Eretz Yisrael. We finished Svarim, and it was incredible. And being able to teach the guys, and the guys would ask me questions that I knew they weren't so comfortable asking their own rebbeim, and they weren't so comfortable asking, people, because of that, they really wanted to hear my answers, because, a lot of times they hear the classic analogy, rebbeim love to say, and I remember I always love to say this to and I don't recommend the rebbeim saying this because it doesn't work, but the classic analogy is say to you, if LeBron James was signing autographs at 6 a.m, would you get up for that? And we say, yeah. They said, so how could you not get up for davening for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And I'm like, and you're talking to a high school guy. A high school guy says, yeah, but Hashem is not LeBron. It's like duh. Like, Rabbi, I hear what you're saying, but Hashem isn't. Right. So that approach doesn't work. But when the guys would ask, when I could say, but the thing was, the guys actually listened to me and respected me when I said something like that, because they were like, oh, you know what, he actually knows, because he actually knows these guys. So I realized that I had that hashpah, and so I taught there, and then I was ultimately offered to teach in TABC because Shir there was going great. So I learned for smicha also with Chaim Jachter. So I received smicha from him, and then I was really going all in on Finas and really just teaching a ton of shirbs. I started Kini Masechta Chabura for Balabatim, and also high school guys. So I really also brought the high school guys and the Balabatim together, and so I wanted them to really get that same hashpah that I had from guys who are working and guys who are doing these things. So we had a really, really, really beautiful matzav going. Then ultimately got the opportunity to come teach Torah in Eretz Yisrael. I was offered to come to Yeshiva Mevaseret, back where it all started, and come live here. So I've been living here for a couple of years here, and some Rebbe in the yeshiva, and still doing everything I do.
Amazing. So somehow you managed to keep it all together, and maybe we have to do a whole nother podcast about that, or not. We'll have to reconnect afterwards. But let's zone in a little bit on the sports matzav. So I'm going to share a couple of my sort of takes or thoughts, questions, and I'm happy to hear your perspective, because you've come from that world, and you're still connected to that world, and you're immersed in Torah. So let's start. You mentioned LeBron James. So I did a little bit of a quick calculation before we did this podcast. My calculation is that the average salary for a year for someone like Patrick Mahomes is equal to approximately an entire district of public school teachers. So like 1,000 teachers and one NFL quarterback. So the relationship to these star players is so crazy. Why? What's pshat? What's going on?
It's a really interesting question. It's a really, really interesting question. And these are questions that I think about a lot, especially as I'm trying to use kind of what I know and, balance what I know to really turn everything I can into, teaching these guys and teaching the guys, trying to turn them into B'nai Torah, and, being able to kind of use that credibility I have, the fact that I know these guys. And that's one question that's always just been on my mind, which is, what is it? Because I also experienced it. I know what it was, to get out of that, like you said, it's a whole nother podcast. This is the type of stuff you can talk about for years. But ultimately, what is it about the athlete? What propels a person to actually put the name of another person on their back and walk around when you're a full-grown adult with a family? You go to a stadium and wear a jersey with like it's a little ridiculous. Like, really, what's the epitome of it? And what I really think, and my opinion is, a humble opinion is that I think the athlete, so to speak, represents a person that people are jealous of, that people want to be. And people like to say, throughout their life, and obviously they're gonna say, I'm happy with who I am, I love who I am, I love my family, and it's all true, 100%. But there always is, I think, this little aspect, this little deep thing within a person that still you want to be that guy. You want to be the guy making millions of dollars for playing a sport. You want to be that guy who everybody knows and everybody's super famous and being talked about on the radio. And there's still like a little deep down fantasy that people kind of hold on to their whole life. And when people walk around, and then they walk around, even when you're an adult, it's like I said, it's like a ridiculous thing if you think about it, to walk around with like a shirt with some other 20-year-old's name on it. It's because it kind of gives you a sense when you go to the stadium and you walk around, you feel like you're that person. It makes you feel a sense of like an alternate identity. Like, you get to be somebody else for me. You get to like kind of live like that guy for me. It kind of put you into this world where you feel like it's kind of like, in a way, like put it like an analogy. It's like when back in the day, whenever you go to school and you have the cool kids who are walking around, the cool kids, I should say, so to speak, right? The cooler kids, and you don't actually believe in the same things as them. You don't think the same way as them. You don't have anything to do with them. But all of a sudden, when they walk into the room, you kind of just act differently. You become somebody else. Why? Not because of you actually believe that's who you really are. It's because that deep down, you kind of just wish you were like them. You want to be the cool kid. When you're in their presence, acting like them makes you feel like you're them. So I think the real connection with athletes and the real reason my guys are so attached to them and so is because that these are people that they feel like they're never going to get, but they can't let go emotionally of this like deep down connection of this is a person like I just wish I was. And there's still kind of like a little fantasy aspect to it. I think even if you have a giant, beautiful family and everything's good, and nobody's saying, Chas v'shalom, that you have any ties on that at all. It's just the point is there's something that's, if you're walking around with a 20-year-old's name on your back, there is some sort of something deeper than I think on the surface.
Right. And then the other sort of aspect of that is the fact that, like, it's true in broader celebrity culture as well, but like people like start caring about, what this guy said about the Israel-Gaza war and what this guy said about who he's voting for and whatever. And correct me if I'm wrong, like these people aren't necessarily very smart or smart at all. They're just tremendously driven, tremendously athletic. That those are wonderful qualities, and there's something to maybe respect about that. But as far as their intellect, no one claims that he has any sort of intelligent opinion. So like it's another sort of sign that something is a little bit off here.
Yeah, that's because people, that's what it is. That these guys, a lot of them are smart guys. Don't get me wrong, but it makes absolutely it's literally the equivalent of some of these guys talking even their political opinions about Israel. It's the same thing as just going to a random just walking to KPMG one day, grabbing a random accountant off the street and just asking his opinion, and then expecting people to give credibility to it. Because if you really think about it at its core, it's the same level of credibility. It's just there is nothing. But the point is, what does the athlete have with the other person? He just has this cool aspect. You look at him and you're like, because I wish I could be him, then I feel like I have to try to think like him too. I want to be like him. Right? That's why when these crazy people start just come out and they're more than happy to support anything that goes against literally the most basic human morals, is because of the fact that people just say, oh, if he believes it, I want to pretend that I'm like him. I want to just like show people that I could have this little alternate identity and I could have like my little escape and little fantasy world. And if they don't want to admit it on the surface, that's the only explanation, on a deeper level.
And then I think maybe the biggest question when it comes to spectator sports is, are we talking about a national pastime or a national religion?
That's the real icker question. And I think that comes down also to the question of, number one, what is the real emotional attachment that people have to sports and the way that the games turn out?
Or maybe specifically to their specific teams, right? I think it's, if you would take someone, I'm just a fan of baseball in general. Like, what are you, crazy? Like, you have to have a team. You have to be connected to that.
Yeah. And I see it so often because, like I say, like I'm in yeshiva, and there's Baruch Hashem, so I get up earlier in the morning. A lot of the times, when the fourth quarter is coming to an end of the Monday Night Football game in America, and you'd expect that you're coming in the fours into yeshiva, you're expecting that it's gonna be pretty quiet, but it happens to be that you see a bright light from a room and you smell the pizza, and you hear the guys, screaming and yelling because they've been up all night watching football. This is every yeshiva, don't worry. But it's like mind-boggling. It's like, what is going on? Then there was one time, I think I mentioned this to you off the podcast. Somebody, a guy I love very dearly, and he's incredible, and he's mamish turned. He's incredible Ben Torah, and he's a tremendous Talmud Chacham. But there's a guy who, there was one time last year towards the beginning of his Shana Aleph, when I came in, and he was just like, same time in the morning, just like lying on the ground, just like lying on the floor. Like, I'm like, you good? What's going on? Like, the Rangers are about to lose. It's over. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, and ultimately, the only reason I'm saying these stories is to show, whoever is listening, what it is that there really is this something so beat. And I think the emotional connection is that the fact that it gives, and not beyond just, Jewish kids, everybody, it gives everybody just this sense of belonging, this feeling that you're connected to a chevra, even if they're not there. That the people that there's always someone's kind of sharing your pain, sharing your happiness, that you just have a chevra. You can always go online. You can always go to the forum. If the Rangers lose, you can just go online and, start ranting with random people, and you guys feel the same pain and the same this and that. And, it's this just feeling that there's always people around you that think like you and are like you, and that even when you're alone and by yourself, you just feel like somebody's with you. Now, if you're hearing that, you also start to think a little bit, oh, you know what? That sounds a little bit like our beautiful religion. That sounds like Torah. That sounds like Yiddishkeit, obviously. Ultimately, I think that's one of the reasons why you'll see why a lot, get people who are, the more serious people get about their learning, is even not to say that they don't care about sports anymore. Again, there's not more parts of that discussion, but you're not going to see people like that, necessarily just, so emotionally attached and depressed because of the fact that you don't need that. Because when you have a feeling of community from the Torah, that you always have Hashem to rely on, you always feel like that, and you always feel like whenever you're feeling down, you don't need to lean on some other random, guy on a message board. You can just open up a sefer, you open up a Tehillim, or even people like you. You always have a Rebbe to go to. You always just go to the base bench. There's always people there to kind of share your pain. And also, when you feel more deeply connected. The more you learn, you feel more deeply connected to Klal Yisrael as a whole, right? It's the same concept that outside of, I'd say, the Jewish people like to talk about, especially yeshiva guys, the Jewish bubble, so to speak, as if it's like a bad thing, which is, the Jewish bubble, quote unquote, is the most beautiful bracha that you can imagine. And that's what I think people in the secular world are seeking with sports. And it's something that we already have built into our lives. So ultimately, you see a lot of guys start to grow out of these feelings of, emotional attachment when they start to recognize that they already have that they actually already have that, so to speak, bubble built in and chevra built in, and that they don't need to seek it as much as people, in the outside world kind of need to do.
Right.
So I think that's where it really runs deep. Yeah.
I wanted to zoom in on one thing that you said that I liked a lot. It was all very interesting. Is the power of the pull is so strong. It's somewhat easy for us to sit here and to dunk on an 18-year-old Shana Aleph guy who's taking it too far. But like, I remember going to baseball games with my father, Fenway Park, and there are like Harvard professors sitting there, screaming their heads off and going crazy and getting super excited and getting super depressed. So like, that just shows how strong of a pull that this is. And I think it's important to validate and recognize that this is a really, really strong force, but one that we have to really think about deeply as to what place it holds in our Torah lifestyle.
Right. And this comes down to the question also in terms of what's the counter argument, of course, with sports, and which is why and something that I take very seriously, and I very much validate, and why guys are very willing to listen to me, is because the word is an outlet, right? When people need an outlet, and guys will say back, sports is a healthy outlet. Would you rather me watch this, or would you rather me go and watch an inappropriate TV show? And we say, ain't something. Sports is great in the sense of sports. What's the key to the outlet? So people are always asking, is sports out there? Can sports be out the outlet? And I think the essence of the question lies in the word can. Can sports be a healthy outlet? Just like everything else in life, 100%. Sports can be a healthy outlet. It's the type of thing that the first thing we got to do is we have to define what is an outlet. An outlet is supposed to be something that takes you away from your struggles, it takes you away from your toil, and takes you away from any, so to speak, anguish you're going through during the day. That's what an outlet is. It's supposed to take you into a place you're still within your life, but to kind of close the door and just go there, take a deep breath so you can just rebuild back up and kind of walk back in. But what I see so much, and everybody says the same thing, sports is an outlet. It's an outlet. I hear this all the time, especially with Shiva guys and everybody, people, my friends, everybody needs an outlet. Even playing sports, right? Playing sports too in theory, it's an incredible outlet because the point is you're sitting there all day, you're exhausted. To go outside, fresh air, play some ball, it could be an amazing thing. But at the same time, I've witnessed, and I see this all the time. In my years, I used to also, referee, for youth sports and umpire baseball games and this type of stuff back in the day. It, Sometimes I see, the sweetest people, literally the sweetest, most amazing Bali Midos, Ben Torah, amazing, incredible people. The moment you put them on a basketball court, they become the most selfish, vulgar people, like tempered I've ever seen. And it's really a scary thing. I remember, especially being, I used to, told you, I used to umpire baseball back in the day. So when I used to umpire these games, I was umpiring, local dads I knew from my local shuls. And these guys are friends, and man, you put them on a baseball field, so to speak, in their outlet, and they become these psychopaths. And what does it mean that it's an outlet? If that's an outlet, I don't know. I don't know what an outlet means. It doesn't make any sense. The concept doesn't make any sense to me, because if you're supposed to be using sports as an escape to get away from your toil and your anguish, and it turns into something that just gives you more toil and anguish because of the fact that it turns you to this other person you care way too much about it. Same thing. Like if you're trying to go watch a sports game because of the fact that it's hard, you're grinding, and it's been a long day in the base managers. You need to go, just relax yourself, and then you go watch a game that puts you to the point where you feel mentally depressed because your team lost the sports game. That's not an outlet. That's just a continuation. That's just going to put you down even more. Sports can be a healthy outlet, but ultimately the way that it's used by the average person is not a healthy outlet whatsoever. And I think honest people will admit that for themselves, so to speak.
Yeah, it reminds me of a great description I once heard from Michael Lewis on his podcast, where he described a guy who was going home from an athletics game, Oakland Athletics. He was taking the train. It was the end of the game. It was like 5 p.m. on a Sunday. And he's like, I'm sitting here all sunburned, hot, depressed, sad, going home. And I see people on their way out to their Sunday dinner, and they're well dressed, and they're excited, and they're happy. And so, like, why is my outlet making me so sad and depressed, and their outlet is seemingly the opposite? So that reminds me of that. But I think the other image that came to my mind is basically like a casino, because a casino, you're going in and there is a chance that you will hit the jackpot and really, fulfill all your fantasies. But, most people who go to the casino as their outlet, we try to get them help, right?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. It's the type of thing that, casinos and sports betting as a whole too. People just think that everything that's not their main ichor is just outlet. It's just outlet. Like it's a very dangerous game to play.
Right. The other thing that you told me that was really interesting was just the great observation that you made about people checking their phones during class shots. Can you share that with us?
Yeah. It's people. Another people always talk about this concept. I hear this thrown around all the time. Is sports avodah zarah? People bring up this concept all the time. That is not a halachic, the discussion that I would get into. Hashkafically, it's something I'll get into, and I'm more than happy to discuss and say. And again, I mean this in a hashkafic sense, not in a halachic sense. But when people say, people say that's ridiculous. Avodah zarah, what shaykhs does sports have to avodah zarah? How could it possibly be? And I'll tell you that there's more than enough times that I'm in shul, and what do I see? That we're davening, it's chazaras shots, and all of a sudden the second kedusha happens. You see about 10 people sit down immediately, phones come right back out, and you see them open up their fantasy teams right away. What's because right now it's Mincha Marav at 4 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. What's going on in my game right now? I got to see the scores. Okay, let me just check. Let me flip through everything right now. Like, mom is sitting in shul, and then same concept that says tonight my team is playing tonight. I have my night seder, I have my charusa. I could probably maybe go for a little bit here and a little bit there, but it's my team. I just got to go watch. It's okay. Whenever one night to miss it is okay. Ultimately, what does it mean? Like you said, this term, like avodah zarah, again, scary term. Why I'm saying specifically hashkafically, avodah zarah means something else, something outside of godliness, something outside of Hashem. That's what it means. Sitra achra means the other side. So ultimately, if you're sitting in a shul, and if you're sitting in the place where you're supposed to feel like you're supposed to be connecting to Hashem, you're supposed to be in the place where you're only worshiping one thing, worshiping Hashem, but all of a sudden you feel compelled to take out the phone to go look at something that's completely nothing to do with tradition, nothing to do with anything, and just kind of and just sit there and just go through the fantasy scores. That hashkafically to me, I don't think there's anything more of avodah zarah ish, so to speak. It's as if your mom is sitting in the face in front of Hashem and being like, "You're not as important to me as this other thing." Even right here in the Heichal, like I'm doing this, and then the same thing with learning. I completely understand when guys are telling me, I have this game and this stuff, and that's okay. But the point is, you tell me what's more important. Like, what do you consider to be your ikr? Right? What's the ikr? Is the ikr, you're learning, and then the second, the outlet, so to speak, is the sports? Or are you saying that you'd rather sacrifice your learning and completely as a whole for this? And I think that's, as a whole, that's really where this kind of shkavic aspect of avodah comes from. I think where people actually, people should be able to understand where people are coming from. They say now, in terms, like I said, the halachic aspects of it, that's a whole other discussion that refer you to much greater rabbis. But the concept is that something we need to be aware of is that, well, how when for us to recognize, to immediately just kind of brush it away when people say, oh, sports is an unhealthy outlet, it's avodah zara, it's this and that. Trust me when I say, and I'll take that I have the credibility to say and speak freely of this topic, because this is my life, and it's a very hard balance. But it's not something that you should just whisk away. And that's not to say, it's not me saying that you should drop sports. That's not even remotely what I would say. That's not what I advise anybody. It's not what I would advise any of my Talmidim, just to drop it and to go away. But the point is to recognize that there is aspects that it's not healthy. And specifically, when people say, oh, but what about not good TV shows? That them too, in the same way. Those are obviously also for other reasons. But this is the same thing as watching an appropriate TV show in a way. Not the same, so to speak, what it is, be'etzem, of the actual act itself, but the same concept of that. It's just, it's not doing good things for you. You always have to evaluate, where is it helping you and where is it helping you lift yourself up in your life, in terms of avodas Hashem, family, parnas as a whole. And if it's just dragging you down, if it's just bringing you more depressed in life, if it's making you just not being able to focus on regular things, and you're complaining that you're not able to focus in davening, and then, but at the same time, you're also the guy taking out your phone or so to check the Bengals score. Ultimately, that's where it comes to.
Right. So that's so beautiful. And I think, I didn't really think about it this way until I just heard you talking about it. But when you take that imagery of a guy who's in Chalar shots and he has the phone out, so there's two things going on here. There's the pull for the phone and the pull for the Chalar shots. So both of those things need to be contended with. But as we spoke about in our last episode, I didn't even think about this connection with about Shmiras Einayim, is that I think the pull is very much there. It's a very real pull, as we mentioned before. Harvard professors are going out there and are all in on sports. So I think maybe the more important discussion to have is the other pull. Like, why is Chalar Hashatz not interesting or not important to us? And maybe that's the main focus area that we should be thinking about as far as this relationship is. Yeah, there isn't so much of a great defense for that behavior vis-a-vis sports, but it's a big, strong pull. And the most important reaction can be, well, let's really make sure that our avodas Hashem is primary. Is that how you approach it when you speak about it with Talmidim?
Yeah, basically the way that I really like to describe the whole approach to sports as a whole, and also just other everything, is that every Chazal tells them, we know that everything is a guf and a neshama, and ultimately we always have to be focused on what the neshama is of everything, and everything else, to get lost in the guf, is it's not the main goal, right? So for example, right, what's the whole point of making a parnasa in life? Talking about in work, let's say working in sports, right? The idea is the neshama of making a parnasa is so that you can raise a great family, and that you could have time and have headspace to be able to focus on learning and able to focus on the good things in life. Anybody who says that, that parnasa is not important and that you should just, drop it completely, don't even think about it, Hashem will give it to you, that's a mandamar and brachas. That's ridiculous. If you look at the way the world works, you have to make parnasa, right? Ultimately. So, but, so the way that, so you always have to remember that what's the neshama of it. Everything on top of the fact of just simply, making the money and to support your family starts getting into guf. So for example, what I mean by that is, for me, Baruch Hashem, I have a job which I tremendously enjoy. I tremendously enjoy sitting on my computer and designing shoes and using my creativity. For me, like, I can't imagine sitting at a desk and crunching numbers. I just can't. For me personally, it's just, I can't imagine it. And I'm incredibly blessed. I'm incredibly thankful, Baruch Hashem, to be able to do something that I enjoy. But I used to, at a certain point when I was in terms of my learning, I started to think about, maybe I have to not like it as much. I'd like pretend to not like it as much. People ask me, oh, how's the job? I'm like, oh yeah, it's Hebel Avolim. I got to learn Torah and whatever it is. And I was in that headspace for a little bit. And then I realized that's a little bit of a ridiculous thing to say like that, because ultimately, like we said, as long as you're always remembering the neshama, the guf on top of that, the important thing is, even enjoying your job already is starting to tap into the guf of it. and just enjoying it. And then, all these other opportunities and all these types of things. And, you can apply the same goof and neshama analogy to everything, same thing watching sports. But ultimately, when you get past like the main core, which is the neshama of everything, which is ultimately avodas Hashem and family and everything, then you always have to just remember that if you're getting too stuck in the goof, then there's something wrong. There's a problem, right? Like, so if I get too stuck in, just spending all my time because I love my job so much, I just want to do it all day. I just want to sit there and work 12, 13 hours a day, like we're saying, and then I don't end up learning and I don't end up starting to have a family. If I really do some introspection, like I'm not even touching the neshama now. I'm just stuck in the goof. I'm just stuck on the outside. I'm stuck on the outer shell right now. And it's the same thing with everything. Same thing with watching sports, for example. What's the neshama? The neshama is that ultimately you want to be a Ben Torah, you want to succeed, you want to grow in avodas Hashem. That's the neshama of everything in this world. That's the root of every single thing that exists. And the sports could be part of the goof of that and help you reach that neshama. But if you just get stuck in the goof, if you just get stuck in the sports itself, it just gets so wrapped up in the sports itself, and you can't pull yourself out, and you see yourself actually sacrificing your neshama, the neshama for the goof. That's not nature. It's supposed to be the opposite way. It's supposed to be you're sacrificing the goof for the neshama. When we start to look at our life like that, and start to recognize that, and really think about things as we just want to see it as a neshama, we just want to tap the neshama, we want to get into the neshama, then that's how I tell my guys, that they can really start to grow and really start to do that introspection. It's just the moment you feel yourself and you see yourself in the goof, that's a moment you have to stop and think, and you have to start to reevaluate and see, where can I put myself back on path right now.
And if someone's listening to this and they feel like they're not on the path, sports has creeped in and taken over in an unhealthy way, what would your top piece of advice they can start doing right now to straighten the ship?
My main top piece of advice is I'm very not into the idea of just going cold turkey. Obviously for things that are not varmasura, this isser, go cold turkey. But in terms of talking about, certain things like this, like in the category of sports, which is, again, like we said before, it can be an outlet. So there is positives and there's also negatives to it, but it's not something that's usser. Of course, nobody's going to say it's usser. I can say nobody, but it could be a healthy thing. And to tell a guy right now, like we're talking about, to tell a guy who's in the level of lying down on the floor and crying because his team lost, to just, drop it completely and, get in the base matters, smack you in the face and go in the base matters and learn. Like, that's ridiculous. It's not going to work. Who's going to listen to you? You're going to lose all your credibility as even being able to actually help him. And the way that I tell my guys, and the way that I like to say, is that, like I mentioned at the very beginning, is just minute by minute. And when you actually start to realize, start to contemplate in your day, how even if you just take those 10 minutes that you spent, you could have finished a full parak of Mishnayos, for example. That 10 minutes that you spent just surfing the web and checking what's going on in the news, that could have been used for a Musar Seder. Everybody's complaining about how they don't have time for Musar Sederim during the day. I hear this all the time. I don't know that. I need to learn Shar B'Tafan. I don't have time to learn Shar B'Tafan. Yeah, but what about those 10 minutes that you spent on Fox News? Theory, that could have been the 10 minutes. And it's the same concept, that the way that I tell the guys is that the way to start is that if you're in this place where you just feel like you're so addicted, but you want to start to bring yourself to mix it in, is how about this? During commercial breaks, what do? Okay, during commercial breaks, I'm hanging out, I'm watching, I don't know what I'm doing, taking on my phone, looking at random things. How about this? How about during every single commercial break, you take out a Mishnah and you do 2 Mishnayos and see what you can do. I guarantee you're going to finish like 2 prakim by the end of this game. It's a 3-hour game. And see what happens. And all of a sudden, see that there's actually but trust me, by the time you finish this game, if you're a growth-oriented person, you're not going to feel as bad as you usually do after doing it. Because a lot of people, if you're a real growth-oriented person, a lot of times that they're wasting time, you feel like a little bit of sense of like a guilt. And you try to justify it within yourself. You're not going to feel as bad as you did when you feel like you actually mixed in some Kedusha. Then you're going to start to realize that then all of a sudden the taste of sports will kind of turn into the taste of, this is such a good opportunity. It helps me, be able to, I can help support my learning. Like, it's a good opportunity for me. I mean, maybe I don't have to focus so much, just stop. So now by learning, it actually motivates me to be able to learn. And then you kind of increase like that, and minute by minute. And the way I always say is just minute by minute, just day by day. It's like, don't look at the guy, especially if we're talking about them. We're talking about people who are learning and people who are already at the stage of working. It's you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice by looking at the Kolo guy and trying to compare everything. I'm never going to be that guy, so who am I? And that's the beautiful thing about Judaism, and ultimately the point, this beautiful thing about the Torah. Like before, we said about the point of what's the real deep emotional connection to the teams and this type of stuff, is because you want to feel like you belong. You want to feel like you're something. That's the beautiful thing about Yiddishkeit, is that it doesn't matter. You don't need to be part of, the Rangers fan club to be somebody. The whole idea is you're already part of Team Klal, you're part of Team Hashem. And even just those 10 minutes you take, you're doing something. And you have malachim, and you have people who are, rejoicing and joining in with you at every single thing that you're doing at that moment. And just take it by 10 minutes. Take it by 10 minutes, take it by 5 minutes, here, there, and there. And you're going to start to see, and the same concept applies when you're sitting at your desk and working, what I used to do and try to do. But is when you're learning, when you're working, you're at your computer, just leave a safer open next to you. Don't even look at it. Don't plan on looking at it. But then what you're going to start to notice, and I like to use Mishnayos as an example. Mishnayos are a great example of just something you can just do quickly. Is like, those moments when you finish a project and you just lean back and then you instinctively go, you reach your pocket, take out your phone, whatever it is, and like start checking up on it. Instead of doing that, you have a safer open next to you. When you take it, just look down and read a Mishnah, and then get back to work, and then read another Mishnah and get back to work. And you're gonna finish Shas in like a few months, and then you can really realize, and this is kind of the path, is just trying to bring the kedusha into those areas where maybe you feel like it's lacking. And you don't need to run away. It's not for everybody to run away and try to just drop everything and try to escape. It's ultimately a lot of people's task is to bring it into what they're doing, and that's ultimately how we're all gonna, achieve our own full potentials and what we all have. Because not every guy is meant to be, and has the opportunities to be learning all day. And not every guy has the tools and the brain for that. But every guy obviously has a purpose. So ultimately that's the very general advice that I would give, is just minute by minute, and you can accomplish way more than you think within 5 minutes.
That is really beautiful. And as you were talking, you mentioned that you're, be proud that you're on Team Hashem. So with all of your sports memorabilia, I hope that you have some jerseys and cleats designed for Team Hashem by now.
We actually did. That's a great story. There was actually, believe it or not, there was a guy a few years ago. His name was Rafael Ortega. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's one of those random guys. I hope he's how this is. You're not a random guy, Rafael. You're a great guy. Amazing guy. Anyways, he became he does happen to be a very upstanding guy. And he's from the East. I think he's Dominican. And I became friendly with him. But he became famous because people started realizing he was on the Cubs at one point, and his walk-up song was "Thank You Hashem," like the song, like the classic one. And people were like, "What is shot? What is this?" And ultimately, I actually saw that video and I was like, "This is crazy." And the next thing I knew, I got an email from this guy. He actually reached out to me. I just got the contact, and he sends an email saying, "Hey, can you make me a cleat with this logo?" He says to me, "Mamish, like the "Thank You Hashem," like Latino guy. Can you make me this cleat with the "Thank You Hashem" on it and an Israeli flag on it? And it's Venezuela. It's Venezuela. Like, also a Venezuelan flag on it. I'm like, what is going on right now? Sure enough, I ended up meeting him in person. He's like one of these guys. He's an awesome dude, and he loves the Jewish community, and he loves, I guess the Judeo-Christian values, and I don't know, whatever it was. They were, believe it or not, there was about to be cleats worn in El Begin that say "Thank You Hashem" on them by this guy, and I was so excited about it. And he got traded like the day before he wore them. So then I actually saw him a few years later by spring training when I was discussing with him, and we made another pair, and ultimately he got released by that team too. So,
There's still time. I don't know if he's still active or not.
Yeah, but we'll get it eventually.
Okay, beautiful. So let's just wrap up with a quick lightning round. We're in the winter, so I have long Friday nights. So what do you like to do with the time on your long Friday nights?
Long Friday nights, that is the time where I spend time with my family. That's my wife. That's my wife's time. Ultimately, the whole week she is beyond incredible. Gabby's incredible. She's tremendous. She really I told you, like, I don't know how she's like I told you, like, this path that we both kind of taken together we didn't enter necessarily marriage with that. We entered marriage with the intention of, hey, we both really have a type to grow and want to grow. But like I mentioned to you, most of my growth really took place already in kind of the balabas stage. And, she really embraced that role more than anybody could ever imagine. And, what she gives me during the week, the amount of flexibility she gives me, already we're sitting here late at night, no problem. I came from night Seder. I've been teaching all day. I was, get up and way before it's light outside. So Friday night, the long Friday nights, that's our time.
Very
and
nice.
I highly recommend anybody who's thinking other things, think about that too. They appreciate it.
Great. And as far as when you teach your Talmidim and you're trying to teach them the Musar and the Hashkafa, what's your go-to sefer to base those shiurim on?
So my go-to sefer is, in general, number one is Shar Mitzvila by Rav Shushan David Pincus. I think I would give a chabura on that many times. I like to give a lot of Hashkafa from Derech Hashem a lot. That was one of the Sfarim. But my real go-to is Tanya. I think that Tanya is the Alter Rebbe just brings out the thing that I think the Alter Rebbe brings out that I think is just incredible and kind of really plays into especially what we're talking about. And I also recommend Balabatim learning Tanya and understanding that he really brings a sense of realism. I would say a lot of Sfarim that you read, and a lot of this sometimes get a little bit discouraging. If you're reading Nimbus Sfarim and Ashkapa Sfarim and telling about the person that that you want to be and that you really want to be and you're thinking about being, but ultimately, like, how am I ever going to get to that place? How am I ever going to be that side? The Alter Rebbe, what he brings out, and his main messaging in general is like, let's take a step back. Let's actually realize where you are. Let's realize who we are. Let's realize that we're all people. We're all people. Actually, we're all neshamas. Hashem put us here. Now let's see with the tools we actually have. Now let's, in a realistic fashion, see what we can accomplish. And like I said, minute by minute, day by day, the Alter Rebbe is very big on that. Like a lot of my stuff that I was mentioning before comes straight from Tanya and straight from Sfarim and the Alter Rebbe. And I think the guys really connect to these messages about, rather than trying to already envision us in a place which we can't even envision ourselves. Let's take who we are right now and step by step, minute by minute. I think those are my real three go-to, I'd say, Hashkafa Sfarim.
Amazing. And if you had to choose a new job in a new industry that you haven't yet been involved in, what would it be?
That's a really interesting question. It's actually funny. I don't even know if I ever thought of that. One other thing that I do, I mentioned this to you too. Maybe it would be designing black hats. No, that was just a plug because I actually do that. I actually I have another side to me which is entrepreneurial. So besides for just my the shoes and designing and stuff like that, I also start a lot of businesses, and I'm always just kind of jumping on ideas and doing stuff. So me and my brother actually created a brand new patent pending hat backpack. Because we see that the classic struggle, you go on the airplanes and you see every single person has got one hand. He's got his black hat bag, and it's the biggest schlep, and it's knocking everybody in the face. He's going down the aisle. The other hand, he got all the other stuff. And then they got a screaming kid on your neck or something. Where do you even put everything? So we created this special bag that actually has a built-in hat pocket. And we also created a special briefcase version of it. So, a little bit more tamed down. So that's, I know that wasn't really your question. I'm going to try to think
you're
about
a good marketer. We got it.
What would I, yeah. Also, you know what? Maybe marketing. That would be my side. I think it would be, can it be Torah? Can it be Torah or no?
I mean, you're in Torah.
Yeah, that's true. I think marketing. We'll do marketing. We'll do marketing.
Okay, fair enough. All right, thank you so much for coming on and all this great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's great talking to you. And I also want to plug you and say thank you so much. And like I mentioned to you privately too, but just for your viewers and people who are listening, that I really, really, really applaud your mission behind this podcast and what you're doing. I think it's very unique. Like I said, there's a lot of requests and a lot of things coming in all the time, just to go on, tell your story and, kind of hype up your story and hype you up as a person. And then it's like, okay, it's a nice entertainment, for 2 hours. What can you get out of it? Learn something cool about a person. But I think it's really, really amazing that you're taking this time and energy and putting so much effort into really trying to inspire people in a real sense, being like, what can we take Lamaisa from great? We have great stories, but now what can we take from people with these great stories, inspire things Lamaisa into people and actually see how can we affect you and see and help you, live your life as Ben Torah and Gross. I really do applaud you and thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.